You were marked before you ever spoke a word, not by man, but by heaven. And while others thought you were just quiet, just sensitive, just different, what they couldn't see was that you were sealed, not rejected, reserved, not overlooked, obscured by design. You weren't meant to blend in. You were meant to carry light into shadows. But first, God had to hide you so the world wouldn't steal what wasn't ready. Think back to the child who stared at the stars a little too long, who cried at things others laughed at, who asked questions no one wanted to answer. That wasn't just sensitivity. It was spiritual memory, awakening in small, holy fragments. You weren't imagining it. You were remembering it. And now, those memories are rising like incense, because the scroll that carries your name is being unsealed. Here at Chosen One Sanctuary, we don't give out titles. We confirm them. We speak to the ones who already know deep down that this world could never explain their story, because their story began before the womb. As it is written in Jeremiah 1:5, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart." Heaven didn't guess. Heaven appointed, and now it's time to remember why. The signs were there, in your childhood, in your silence, in the strange beauty of your pain. And when we walk through these signs, one by one, you may finally understand why you felt everything so deeply, why you never fit in, why the war over your soul started so early. Stay until the end, because this isn't just a message, it's a mirror, and what it reveals could explain your entire life. And what it awakens might just activate your scroll. Let the signs speak. The unveiling begins now. The Signature of Singularity. You didn't ask to feel different. You just were. From your earliest moments, something marked you. An invisible thread pulling you away from the crowd, not in rebellion, but in quiet reverence. While others were busy blending in, you were becoming. Not in public view, but in sacred silence. This wasn't alienation, it was divine insulation. The world called it too quiet, too intense, or too much. But in heaven's eyes, it was distinction. When God chooses a vessel, he marks it early, not with loudness, but with difference. David was a shepherd, not a soldier. Mary was a young girl, not a priest. Moses was exiled before he was ever sent. You didn't fit in because you weren't meant to. You were spiritually coded to stand apart. That discomfort wasn't a defect, it was a clue. A whisper from heaven. You have not been overlooked. You've been set apart. You weren't delayed, you were disguised. And though you walked among many, you were never truly among them. Eyes that saw the unseen, while others played, you perceived. There was a knowing in you, long before you had words for it. You saw things, subtle shifts in emotion, the weight of a room, the ache behind someone's silence. Others missed it. You couldn't ignore it. This was not hypersensitivity. It was holy discernment awakening early. The Spirit of the Lord searches all things, and he chose your inner lamp to burn brighter than most. Proverbs 20:27 says, "The human spirit is the lamp of the Lord, that sheds light on one's inmost being." You were born with that lamp lit. Even as a child, you could sense when something was wrong, even if no one said a word. You'd feel when a storm was coming, not outside, but in someone's heart. This wasn't paranoia, it was prophecy in seed form. You weren't fragile, you were finely tuned. The eyes of the chosen are never ordinary, because they're trained not just for seeing, but for revealing. A heart too soft for a hard world. Your tenderness was never weakness, it was warfare in disguise. The enemy always attacks empathy early, because it is the seedbed of intercession, compassion, and spiritual authority. You felt pain that wasn't yours. You cried tears that no one else noticed. You held burdens you couldn't name, and sometimes that made you feel broken. But heaven calls it formed. Romans 12:15 commands, "Rejoice with those who rejoice, mourn with those who mourn." This isn't just instruction, it's identity. The ability to feel deeply is a mark of divine maturity. Joseph wept when his brothers didn't recognize him, not because he was weak, but because he remembered everything and still chose mercy. You were weeping for people you didn't even understand. You were carrying burdens heaven hadn't yet explained, and though it broke you at times, it also built you. Dreams that were not just dreams. The night was never silent for you. While others slept, you dreamed, in colors, in codes, in fragments that made no sense until they did. You thought they were just dreams. But heaven was already writing in the language of your destiny. Job 33:15-16 tells us, "In a dream, in a vision of the night, God opens the ears of men and seals their instruction." You weren't dreaming. You were being instructed. Visions that made your chest tighten. Scenarios that later came true. Faces that appeared before you ever met them. These were not coincidences. They were confirmations. Joseph dreamt of ruling when he was still a boy in a robe. And it was that dream that got him thrown into the pit, and also the very thing that led him to the palace. You weren't delusional. You were being downloaded. Every dream you remember is a breadcrumb. Follow them. They lead back to the scroll. Divine interventions in disguise. You should have been crushed. You should have been lost. You should have been forgotten. But you weren't, because someone stepped in. A moment before impact. A whisper before the fall. A stranger who showed up at the exact moment. What others called luck was divine strategy. Psalm 91:11 says, "For he will command his angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways." You didn't earn it. You were assigned it. Because when heaven marks a life, it doesn't leave it unguarded. Moses was drawn from the water, a Hebrew baby raised in Pharaoh's palace. Esther was placed in a pagan kingdom, hidden behind beauty, protected by providence. So were you. You weren't just saved, you were shielded. And every time something should have taken you out, it was a divine reminder. Your scroll is still active. Whispers in the silence before you could quote scripture. You were already speaking with God. Not in formal prayers, but in soul conversations. You'd feel peace where there should have been fear. You'd hear clarity in moments of chaos. You'd feel not alone, even when no one was near. This wasn't your imagination. It was the presence. Psalm 145:18 says, "The Lord is near to all who call on him in truth." Even when your voice was a whisper, even when your words weren't perfect, he was near. Many chosen ones recall talking to someone as a child, not knowing it was the beginning of friendship with the divine. You were never alone. You were always accompanied. And the silence wasn't absence. It was divine surveillance. Isolation was preparation. You tried to fit in. You tried to explain. But no matter how hard you tried, you always felt like an echo in a world of noise. The classroom, the family dinner, the birthday party, places of noise became sanctuaries of inner solitude. That wasn't rejection. It was refinement. Romans 5:3-4 says, "Suffering produces perseverance, perseverance character, and character hope." Your loneliness was a forge. Every empty room was a secret altar. Like David tending sheep while Saul ruled. Like Joseph in the prison while Pharaoh dreamed. Like Elijah in the cave while Jezebel hunted. Heaven hides what it intends to elevate, and while you mourned the crowd, God was building a crown. Fascinated by fire-tested stories. Other kids played pretend. You searched for purpose. While they chased superheroes, you studied warriors of faith. You didn't just read about Moses. You saw yourself in his stutter, his fear, his fire. You didn't just admire Esther. You felt her courage burning inside your chest. These weren't stories. They were mirrors. Hebrews 12:1 calls them our great cloud of witnesses. You were never reading for entertainment. You were remembering your lineage. You are not first, you are continuation. And the stories that stirred your soul were heaven's way of saying, this is your bloodline, this is your legacy, this is your language. Questions that carried heaven's echo. You asked questions no one had answers for. What is the meaning of all this? Why does pain exist? Why do I feel everything so deeply? Where is God, really? You weren't being difficult. You were being drawn. Proverbs 2:3-5 says, if you call out for insight, then you will understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. Like young Samuel hearing a voice in the dark, like young Jesus sitting with elders at 12, your questions were not rebellion. They were recognition. Every hard question you asked was a door trying to open, and heaven heard them all. Born with a battle-tested spirit, you faced storms before you even knew how to swim, but you didn't drown. The enemy saw your potential and sent storms early. Betrayal, loss, abandonment, hardship. But each trial was forging armor. Each wound was forming wisdom. Isaiah 43:2 promises, when you pass through the waters, I will be with you. And when you walk through fire, you will not be burned. This is the secret of the chosen. We bleed before we build. We break before we bless. We burn before we blaze. You are still here, not because of luck, but because of lineage. Your survival is not just a testimony, it's evidence of assignment. And every scar you carry is a seal. The scroll has always been written. Now it begins to open. You thought your childhood was strange, but heaven calls it sacred. The very things that made you feel misplaced were the early movements of divine preparation. You weren't wandering, you were being woven. Thread by thread, moment by moment, your story was never random. It was prophetic architecture in disguise. This is the paradox. You weren't delayed, you were disguised, hidden for a holy hour, preserved in plain sight, until now. Because now, the silence breaks. The signs are no longer scattered. They've come together to reveal the scroll that carries your name. And you, chosen one, are no longer in the waiting. You are in the awakening. You have passed through fire. You have stood in rooms where no one saw you, yet heaven never took its eyes off you. You have carried questions that burned, and a purpose that wouldn't let you go. And now, the time of wondering has given way to remembrance. You are not who they said you were. You are who heaven called you to be. You have been marked. You have been forged. And now, you are being sent. If this message confirmed what your spirit always knew but never had language for, comment 777 below. If one moment, one word, or one sign stirred something ancient in you, share it. Let your story awaken someone else's. And if you feel the pull, the holy ache to walk with those who carry the same fire, subscribe to Chosen One Sanctuary. Because this is not just a channel, it is a gathering of the remnant, a call to the ones who were never lost, only hidden. You are not alone. You are the next echo.